It was a Tuesday morning like any other, or so I thought. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my usual cup of chamomile tea, when my phone buzzed with a notification. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just another group chat message from my book club. But then I saw the sender, my lawyer, Mr. Harris. The subject line was stark and unsettling. Call me immediately. My heart skipped a beat. Lawyers don't send messages like that unless something is terribly wrong. I tried to steady my hands as I dialed his number, my mind racing through every possible scenario. Was it about my will? Had something happened to my son, Daniel? Or, God forbid, my grandchildren? The seconds stretched into an eternity as the phone rang. Mr. Harris finally answered. His voice was grave, almost trembling. Mrs. Carter, I need you to listen very carefully. There's something you need to know about your daughter-in-law, Emily. I can't say more over the phone, but it's urgent. Please come to my office as soon as you can. My breath caught in my throat. Emily? The woman I'd welcomed into my family? The mother of my grandchildren? The person I'd trusted with my son's happiness? I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me. What could possibly be so serious that my lawyer would break protocol and contact me directly? I had no idea that the truth waiting for me would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family, force me to make the hardest choices of my life. Looking back, I realize how much of my life has revolved around my family. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business and family was everything. My parents taught me that loyalty and trust were the cornerstones of any relationship, and I carried those values into adulthood. When I married my late husband, Richard, we built a home filled with laughter, warmth, and a sense of belonging. Even after he passed away, I made it my mission to keep our family close, to be the glue that held us together. My son, Daniel, has always been the light of my life. From the moment he was born, I felt an unbreakable bond with him, a connection that only deepened as he grew older. He was a sensitive child, always quick to offer a hug or a kind word, and I did my best to nurture his gentle spirit. A single mother, I worried constantly about whether I was doing enough, whether I was giving him the tools he needed to thrive in a world that could be so harsh. But Daniel surprised me. He excelled in school, made friends easily, and eventually became a successful architect. I couldn't have been prouder. When Daniel introduced me to Emily, I was overjoyed. She was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely devoted to my son. I remember the first time she came over for dinner. She brought a homemade apple pie and insisted on helping me set the table. We laughed together in the kitchen, sharing stories about our childhoods and favorite recipes. I saw the way Daniel looked at her, his eyes full of hope and admiration, and I thought, this is it. He's found his person. I welcomed Emily into our family with open arms, eager to embrace her as the daughter I never had. Their wedding was a beautiful, sun-drenched affair in our backyard. I still have the photos, Daniel beaming in his navy suit, Emily radiant in her lace gown, the two of them dancing under twinkling fairy lights. I remember feeling a deep sense of peace that day, as if all the struggles and sacrifices had been worth it. When they announced they were expecting their first child, I cried tears of joy. Becoming a grandmother was a dream come true, and I threw myself into the role with all the enthusiasm I could muster. I babysat, baked cookies, and read bedtime stories, relishing every moment with my grandchildren. For years, everything seemed perfect. Our family gatherings were filled with laughter and love, and I cherished the little traditions we created: Sunday dinners, holiday baking marathons, summer picnics at the lake. I trusted Emily completely, never questioning her intentions or her love for Daniel and the kids. She confided in me about her work stresses, her hopes for the future, even her insecurities as a mother. I listened, offered advice when asked, and tried to be the supportive mother-in-law I'd always hoped to have. But now, as I replay those memories in my mind, I can't help but wonder if I missed something. Was there a moment to look? A word? A hesitation that should have raised a red flag? I prided myself on being intuitive, on knowing my family inside and out. Yet as I sat in my kitchen that morning, clutching my phone and waiting for answers, I realized how fragile trust can be. The foundation I'd built my life on was about to be tested in ways I never could have imagined. And the woman I thought I knew so well was at the very center of the storm I never saw coming. It started with little things so small, in fact, that I brushed them off at first. The first time I noticed something odd was during a routine visit to Daniel and Emily's house. I was helping Emily sort through the mail when I saw a letter from a credit card company addressed to her. She quickly snatched it up, laughing it off. "Just another offer I don't need," she said, tucking it into her purse. I didn't think much of it then, but a seed of curiosity was planted. A few weeks later, Daniel called me, sounding distracted. "Mom, have you noticed anything strange about Emily lately?" he asked, his voice low. I hesitated, not wanting to overstep. "No, sweetheart." "Why? Is everything all right?" He sighed. "She's just different, distant. She's been working late a lot, and she's always on edge." I tried to reassure him, suggesting that maybe she was just stressed from work. But his words lingered in my mind. The next time I visited, I noticed Emily seemed preoccupied, her phone never far from her hand. She'd step out of the room to take calls, her voice hushed and urgent. When I asked if everything was okay, she forced a smile. "Just work stuff. You know how it is." But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted around the room. Even the children seemed to sense something was off, clinging to her legs and vying for her attention, only to be gently pushed away. One afternoon, while babysitting the kids, I found a stack of unopened bills in a kitchen drawer. My heart pounded as I glanced at the return addresses, utilities, credit cards, even a notice from the bank. I knew it wasn't my place to pry, but worry gnawed at me. When Emily returned home, I tried to bring it up gently. "Emily, is everything all right? I noticed some bills in the drawer. If you ever need help, you know you can talk to me." She bristled, her face flushing. "Everything's fine, really. We just got a little behind. But it's under control." Her tone was sharp, and I felt a sting of embarrassment for even asking after that. I started noticing more inconsistencies. Emily would cancel plans at the last minute, claiming she had to work late or wasn't feeling well. Daniel seemed more withdrawn, his usual warmth replaced by a quiet frustration. At family dinners, Emily would barely touch her food, her mind clearly elsewhere. I caught her once staring blankly out the window, tears glistening in her eyes. When I asked if she was okay, she brushed me off, insisting she was just tired. The tension in the house was palpable. Daniel and Emily argued more frequently, their voices carrying down the hallway even when they tried to keep things private. I overheard snippets, words like money, trust, and mistake. I wanted to help, to fix whatever was wrong, but every attempt to reach out was met with resistance. Emily grew more guarded, and Daniel seemed caught between wanting to protect her and needing answers himself. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Daniel confided in me. "Mom, I found out Emily took out a loan without telling me. I don't understand why she'd hide something like that." His eyes were filled with hurt and confusion. I hugged him, wishing I could shield him from the pain. Maybe she was scared, Daniel. Maybe she thought she could handle it on her own. But even as I said the words, doubt crept in. What else was Emily hiding? The unease grew with each passing day. I started to question everything, every late-night phone call, every unexplained expense, every forced smile. I wanted to believe the best in Emily, to trust that she was the woman I'd welcomed into our family. But the cracks were widening, and I could no longer ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I just didn't know how deep the truth would go, how much it would cost us all. I barely remember the drive to Mr. Harris's office. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white, and my mind spun with every possible scenario. I tried to convince myself it was all a misunderstanding, that Emily's troubles were nothing more than a rough patch, something we could fix together as a family. But the urgency in Mr. Harris's voice haunted me, and by the time I reached his office, my heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. Mr. Harris greeted me with a somber nod and ushered me into his office, closing the door. Behind us, he gestured for me to sit, and I sank into the chair, my legs suddenly weak, took a deep breath, folding his hands on the desk. "Mrs. Carter, I want you to know that I wouldn't have contacted you like this unless it was absolutely necessary. What I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear." I nodded, bracing myself. "Please just tell me what's going on." He slid a folder across the desk. "I've been contacted by the bank regarding some unusual activity on your family's accounts. At first, I thought it was a simple error. But after looking into it further, I discovered a pattern of unauthorized withdrawals and forged signatures. The evidence points to Emily." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Emily? Are you sure?" My voice was barely a whisper. He nodded gravely. "I'm afraid so. There are also several loans taken out in your name and Daniel's, as well as credit cards you never applied for. The amounts are significant. I've already started the process of freezing the accounts to prevent further damage, but the bank is considering pressing charges." "I'm so sorry." I stared at the folder, my mind reeling. Emily, my daughter-in-law, the woman I'd trusted. With my family, my home, my grandchildren had been stealing from us. Its betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I thought of Daniel, of the children, of all the moments I'd defended Emily, convinced she was just overwhelmed or misunderstood. How could I have been so blind? Mr. Harris's voice broke through my thoughts. "There's more. I've also received information that Emily has a criminal record under her maiden name. She was involved in a similar case years ago, but the charges were dropped after a settlement. I know this is a lot to process, but you need to decide how you want to proceed. The bank will need a statement, and Daniel has to be told." I felt the room spinning around me. My first instinct was to protect Daniel, to shield him from the pain I knew this would cause. But I also knew I couldn't keep this secret not when so much was at stake. I thought of my grandchildren, of the home we'd built, of the trust that had been shattered in an instant. Tears stung my eyes as I tried to find my voice. "What happens now?" asked, my words trembling. Mr. Harris looked at me with genuine sympathy. "That depends on you. You can press charges, or you can try to handle this privately. Either way, Daniel needs to know the truth. I'll support you in whatever you decide." I nodded, numb. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, heavier than anything I'd ever carried. I knew that whatever I chose, nothing would ever be the same. As I left Mr. Harris's office, the folder clutched tightly in my hands. I realized I was standing at a crossroads. I had to choose between protecting my family's future and confronting the woman who had betrayed us all. But as I walked to my car, one question echoed in my mind louder than all the rest. How do you save your family when the threat is already inside your home? And what would I do next, now that the truth was finally out? The drive home felt endless, every mile heavy with dread. I rehearsed what I would say to Daniel, how I would break the news without shattering him completely. But there's no gentle way to reveal a betrayal of this magnitude. By the time I pulled into their driveway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Inside, the house was quiet except for the distant sound of the children playing in their room. Daniel was in the kitchen, hunched over his laptop, worry etched deep into his brow. Emily was nowhere in sight. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and called his name. He looked up, surprised to see me at that hour. "Mom, is everything okay?" I sat down across from him, the folder from Mr. Harris clutched in my lap. "Daniel, we need to talk. It's about Emily." My voice was softer than I intended, but he immediately sensed the gravity. He closed his laptop, concern flickering. In his eyes, "What's going on?" I slid the folder toward him, my heart pounding. "I went to see Mr. Harris today. He showed me some things about our accounts, about Emily. I'm so sorry, Daniel, but you need to see this." He opened the folder, scanning the documents. At first, confusion, then disbelief. "No, this can't be right. Emily wouldn't, she couldn't." His voice broke, and he looked up at me, searching my face for any sign that this was a mistake, a cruel joke. Before I could answer, Emily walked in, carrying a basket of laundry. She froze when she saw us, her eyes darting from Daniel to the folder on the table. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was suffocating. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "Emily, what is this?" She set the basket down, her hands trembling. "Daniel, I can explain." He cut her off, his voice rising. "Explain? You took out loans in our names. You forged my signature. Why, Emily? Why would you do this to us?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was trying to fix things, to pay off some old debts. I thought I could handle it before anyone found out. So sorry, Daniel. I never wanted to hurt you. Daniel's face twisted with pain and anger. You lied to me. You lied to my mother. You put our family at risk. How could you? The children, sensing the tension, peeked around the corner. I quickly ushered them back to their room, my heart breaking for them. They didn't deserve any of this. Back in the kitchen, the confrontation escalated. Daniel's anger gave way to heartbreak, his voice cracking as he pleaded for answers. Emily sobbed, alternating between apologies and desperate justifications. She insisted she'd been scared, that she'd felt trapped, that she'd never meant for any of this to happen. The damage was done. I stood there, torn in two. Part of me wanted to comfort Emily, to believe that she was just overwhelmed and made terrible choices out of desperation. But another part of me, the part that had watched my son's trust unravel, that had seen the fear in my grandchildren's eyes, knew that some lines had been crossed that couldn't be undone. The rest of the family reacted in their own ways. My sister, who lived nearby, came over as soon as she heard. She was furious, demanding that Emily leave the house immediately. Daniel's best friend, Mark, tried to calm everyone down, urging us to think about the children. The house became a storm of voices, some pleading for understanding, others calling for justice. In the chaos, I found myself standing in the hallway, clutching the wall for support. I had always believed that love and loyalty could weather any storm, but now I wasn't so sure. I wanted to protect my son, to shield my grandchildren from the fallout. But I also felt a pang of compassion for Emily, who looked so small and broken in that moment. As the night wore on, the initial shock gave way to exhaustion. Daniel retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, sobbing quietly. I stood in the middle of it all, feeling utterly lost. I knew that whatever happened next, our family would never be the same. And I couldn't help but wonder, was it possible to find forgiveness after a betrayal like this? Or was this the end of the family I'd worked so hard to hold together? That night, I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the confrontation, every word that had been spoken and every tear that had been shed. My mind was a storm of conflicting emotions, anger, grief, guilt, and a deep aching sense of responsibility. I kept thinking about Daniel, about the children, about the home we'd built together. I knew I couldn't let this betrayal define us, but I also couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. Something had to change. By morning, I realized I had to be the one to take action. I couldn't wait for Daniel to decide, or for Emily to make amends on her own. I needed to set boundaries, not just for my sake, but for the sake of everyone I loved. It was the hardest decision I'd ever faced, but I knew it was the only way forward. I called a family meeting, asking Daniel and Emily to join me in the living room. The air was thick with tension as they sat across from me, both looking exhausted and defeated. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. I love you both, I began, my eyes filling with tears. But what's happened can't be ignored. Emily, I know you're sorry, but sorry isn't enough. You've broken our trust, and there are consequences for that. For the sake of the children and for Daniel's peace of mind, I think it's best if you stay with your sister for a while. We all need space to process this and figure out what comes next. Emily's face crumpled, and Daniel looked away, his jaw clenched. I pressed on, my voice trembling but firm. Daniel, I know this is unbearable, but you need time to think about what you want. I'll help with the kids, and we'll get through this together. But we can't sweep this under the rug. We have to face it, no matter how painful. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand. I'll go. I'm so sorry. She gathered a few things and left quietly the door, closing behind her with a finality that echoed through the house. After she was gone, Daniel broke down. I held him as he cried, feeling his pain as if it were my own. How do we move on from this, Mom? He whispered. One step at a time, I said softly. If we focus on the kids, on healing, on rebuilding trust, it won't be easy, but we're not alone. We have each other. As the days passed, the house felt emptier, but also calmer. Daniel started to open up, talking about his fears and hopes for the future. The children adjusted slowly, asking about their mother but finding comfort in routine and love. I knew the road ahead would be long, and forgiveness wouldn't come quickly. But for the first time since the truth came out, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new, a chance to rebuild, to set healthier boundaries, and to rediscover the strength we'd always had inside us. And as I watched Daniel tuck the children into bed that night, I realized that even in the aftermath of betrayal was still room for redemption. In the weeks that followed, our family settled into a new, unfamiliar rhythm. The absence of Emily was felt in every quiet moment, her laughter missing from the breakfast table, her shoes no longer by the door, her voice absent from the nightly bedtime routine. The children asked about her every day at first, their small faces searching mine for answers I struggled to give. I told them the truth in the gentlest way I could, that Mommy needed some time to work through grown-up problems, but that she loved them very much. It was a delicate balance, protecting their innocence while honoring the reality of what had happened. Daniel threw himself into his work and the children, determined to keep their lives as stable as possible. I saw him wrestle with anger and heartbreak, but I also saw a quiet resilience begin to take root. He started going to therapy, something he'd always resisted before, and slowly, he began to open up about his pain and confusion. There were days when he was distant, lost in thought, and others when he seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Our conversations grew deeper, more honest. For the first time in years, he let me see his vulnerability, and I cherished the trust that was being rebuilt between us. Emily, for her part, respected the boundaries we'd set. She moved in with her sister and began attending counseling. She wrote letters to the children, which Daniel read to them at bedtime, and she sent apologies to both of us. I could see she was trying to make amends, but I also knew that forgiveness would take time, if it ever came at all. The wounds she'd left were deep, and while I hoped for her healing, I was no longer willing to sacrifice my family's peace for the sake of appearances. Other relationships shifted too. My sister, who had been so angry at first, softened over time. She offered to help with the children and became a steady presence in our lives. Friends and neighbors reached out, some with sympathy, others with gossip thinly veiled as concern. I learned to tune out the noise and focus on what truly mattered, the well-being of my son and grandchildren. There were moments of joy amid the sorrow. The children's laughter returned, tentative at first, then stronger. We started new traditions Friday. Night movie marathons, pancake breakfasts, long walks in the park. I found strength in the small victories. A genuine smile from Daniel, a peaceful night's sleep, the sound of the children's voices echoing through the house. Each day we took another step forward, building something new from the pieces of what had been broken. Yet, I couldn't ignore the bittersweet reality that some things would never be the same. The trust I'd once given so freely was now guarded, shaped by hard-earned wisdom. Our family was smaller, quieter, but also more honest and resilient. I missed the way things used to be, but I was proud of how far we'd come in the end. The pain of betrayal didn't destroy us, it transformed us. We learned to set boundaries, to speak our truths, and to lean on each other when the world felt unsteady. And as I watched Daniel and the children move forward, I realized that even in the aftermath of heartbreak, there was hope. We were not defined by what had happened to us, but by how we chose to heal and grow. And that, I decided, was the most empowering outcome of all. Looking back, I realize how easy it is to believe that love and loyalty alone can protect a family from harm. I wanted so badly to trust, to see only the best in those I loved, that I ignored the quiet warnings in my own heart. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's that intuition is a gift we should never silence. The uneasy feelings, the small inconsistencies, those are not just shadows of doubt, but signals that deserve our attention. Trust is precious, but it must be balanced with self-respect and healthy boundaries. I've also learned that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and that healing takes time. It's okay to grieve what's been lost, to feel anger and sadness, but it's also possible to find strength in vulnerability. My family is not perfect, and we never will be. But we are honest now, and we are learning to rebuild on a foundation of truth rather than illusion. To anyone who finds themselves in a similar storm, I want you to know you are not alone. It takes courage to face betrayal, to set boundaries, and to choose your own well-being, even when it means making painful decisions. Trust yourself, speak up, and remember that it's never too late to start again. No matter how broken things may seem, our story isn't over. There are still challenges ahead, and I know there will be more moments that test our strength. But I also know that we are capable of surviving and even thriving after heartbreak. If you're still with me, I hope you'll join me for the next chapter, because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we never expected to tell.